Hey guys, I want to give you some debating tips, some advice today to be an effective communicator of ideas. Something to hopefully save you hours of wasted time banging your head against the wall, accomplishing little to nothing. And my point here is that you should never underestimate the power of delusion and emotional attachment and ego attachment to ideas. So I just got out of the most brain dead argument I've ever had, and I've argued with a ton of people, a ton of times, and this really was amazing. It takes the cake. I was floored and appalled by by my debating opponent's ability to completely shut off any receptiveness to the truth, to completely put on the blinders to anything that didn't line up with their worldview. And I'm not claiming that I'm always right or that I don't make the same mistake myself sometimes, or in fact, oftentimes I used to in the past. But it's something I think I've conquered. That is using emotion instead of facts and reason and logic. But for instance, this argument I was in, it was over 300 comments, and I know that the first question, why would you waste your time with somebody stupid like that? And I don't like to give up on people. I like to try to make people develop their ideas fully. I'm not going to give them the pass. If somebody's advocating that they want to run your life or run the world a certain way, I'm going to call them out on it and make them back up their ideas and point out everything that's wrong with those ideas, because it's actually important, and I want to reach those people. I believe that in every person there is potential to recognize the truth and virtue and morality and goodness and fact and reason and logic. So this is something that's always kind of bugged me. And if you are at all interested in philosophy, especially libertarianism or anarchism, you know what I'm talking about. You've debated with what you probably think are complete idiots and been incredibly frustrated that people seem to be completely impervious to reason and logic and evidence. And I always wondered why. Like, why are some people so closed off to this? Why are their minds so hardened? Why do they have such a defense against these ideas? And I always thought it was a matter of intelligence, that some people are just dumb and they just don't get it. They just can't think. And that may be part of it, but I don't think it is the main reason. I don't think it's the main cause. What I've noticed in my experience, especially in this last debate, is that emotional attachment and ego attachment to ideas, as well as just years of propaganda, that seems to be what drives people's irrationality and their unwillingness to argue fairly and to accept basic logical premises and facts and reason and logic, evidence, etc. And if you look around the world, it sort of makes sense. You see this everywhere. The most deluded and crazy of ideas, the biggest fantasies, the things that make the world burn the most, the reasons behind war and genocide and things like that, all of the worst things in human history have been because of the dumbest, craziest ideas. But these ideas that are devoid of fact or reason or evidence, instead of having fact and reason and evidence, which is supposed to be the cake, they are all icing and no cake. That is, they're all emotion, they're all propaganda, and they are all just years of delusion and pounding these ideas in people's heads. It's all fantasy and emotion, and yeah, I guess those are the best words to describe it, and no reason or logic or evidence. That's why it's so hard to eradicate irrationality, because people cling to that so tightly because they have an emotional attachment. That's what I've noticed in my debates with people, and just by looking at the world around us, like these ISIS terrorists in Iraq, torturing and murdering people for the craziest and stupidest of reasons, because they don't believe the same fantasy religion as you. Because you don't believe the same fantasy religion as them, excuse me, or Nazism, or genocides. They're all for like trivially crazy, stupid ideas like, oh, are you a Tutsi or a Hutu? Are you a Sunni or a Shiite? Are you a Jew or a Christian? It's like you're doing the worst things imaginable, torturing people, killing people, men, women, and children. The worst things you can do for the dumbest reasons, the reasons that have literally zero impact on anything important. So that's important. I mean, that this holds the key to peace in society, in my opinion, is finding out the root cause of people's delusions. And in my opinion, it is what it takes is years of propaganda and a strong emotional attachment, and just pounding these ideas in people from early on when they're young. That is what's powerful if you want to brainwash people. Brainwashing is incredibly powerful. Never underestimate the power of delusion. That's my main point. The crazier an idea is, the further it is from the truth, the earlier you have to start pounding it into people's heads. Because children are born empirical and rational and honest. Kids always ask those difficult questions like, Mommy and Daddy, why do you do this? Where do I come from? What's this? Why are they doing that funny thing? And it's always funny to watch parents squirm and try to explain their own irrationalities to kids. Like, why is it wrong for me to hit other people, but it's okay for you to hit me? And to listen to the parent try to translate what is essentially irrational in their head into the rational mind of a child is funny, because it just doesn't work. It's like putting a cylinder into a square hole, right? It just doesn't work. It's difficult because children are always they're relentlessly rational. They're going to ask the obvious questions over. Why are you doing this stupid thing that doesn't make any sense? And it's only through years of pounding these ideas in people's heads over and over and over again and getting them to experience an emotional attachment that you can get them to accept these crazy ideas like nationalism, like religion, like all of the things that seem to be most devoid of fact, reason, evidence, and logic are the things that you have to get people early on and brainwash them into believing. I myself am not an atheist, so I'm not speaking out against all religion, but of course most religion, most superstition, most spirituality, I believe, is completely detached from the truth. And the reason the craziest and stupidest superstitions live with us in human society for so long is because they have the most powerful attachment, and that is emotional attachment. This is something I've actually noticed in myself, and it's something that's been difficult to get over, but I think I've mastered it, is not having an emotional attachment to an argument, but strictly relying on fact, reason, and evidence. If you are proven wrong, just simply accept it. And here's my main tip, my main debating advice to you is don't yell at people, don't be mean, because as soon as you do that, they're going to cling to their arguments for dear life. It's like when the wind blows, people are going to cling to their jackets as hard as they can, and they're never going to let go. Like, even if you are right beyond a shadow of a doubt, they don't want you to be right. They don't want to let you win. I've experienced the same thing where I will just like do the most crazy mental gymnastics, or I used to try to prove somebody wrong. And it was like, as soon as you let go of that emotional attachment, and I look back at myself a few years ago and I realize, holy crap, like, now that I don't have this emotional attachment, like this patriotism or nationalism as an example, like, I'm so much more open to opposing ideas. I don't have this knee-jerk reaction where I want to cling to my ideas for dear life, because I have an emotional connection to it. That's why patriotism and nationalism is such a powerful and dangerous idea, is that it doesn't have any real rational underpinning. It's just pure emotional. It's pride. Like, you were born on this piece of dirt, therefore you wave this flag, and it was a complete chance. It was complete coincidence that you were born here. Yet you take so much pride in it. You wear clothes, you wave flags that bear your national colors, and you sing songs and you pledge allegiance to this nation. Why? Why is this nation better than other ones? I understand if people support one nation because of its philosophical foundation and reason and ideas, and that's why I'm kind of sympathetic to American patriotism, because at least it's founded in a little bit of freedom, historically at least. But in general, nationalism and rooting for your team, your sports team, for instance. Sports is another perfect example. People just lose it when their team doesn't win. Like, if you were watching the World Cup with Brazil, when Brazil lost, it was sad and pathetic to watch videos of people just crying endlessly that their team lost, and they got destroyed, by the way. It was like 10-1 or 2 or something like I didn't watch it. But it's like your life doesn't even change as a result of this. Why do you care? Why is this important to you at all? But it is. The most trivial things seem to be the most important to people. So my advice to you is to, instead of being like the cold wind blowing on somebody and they're just going to cling to their ideas even tighter, be like the warm sun that approaches people with kindness and understanding, and you're not hostile. You're not seen as a threat. That's what's important. Don't be seen as a threat to people's emotional attachment. Instead, be nice to them with compassion and understanding. Correct them when you can, but don't do it in a mean, condescending way. Do not be rude. Don't be condescending, because that very rarely works. Unless somebody is really committed to being right and being rational, and they're willing to turn that magnifying glass backwards on themselves and actually analyze their own beliefs honestly, which is quite rare, well, only then, in that case, you may be able to get away by being mean to somebody and humiliate them into accepting the truth because they just feel so stupid, right? But most people are not going to feel stupid when you browbeat them with the truth. They're just going to hate you and not care about what's right and wrong. They're just going to defend their arguments tooth and nail and resist you at all costs. And that's something that I am guilty of, is being rude and browbeating people and being sarcastic and mean. People aren't very, very receptive to that. So I've always hemmed and hawed on what's the best way to try to convey ideas and convince people. And as of late, I think my conclusion is to be compassionate and kind and empathetic, and realize that you likely came from an irrational background or some irrational ideas yourself at some point as well. So good luck out there. Don't be mean. Don't be a jerk. Be nice, but still challenge the ideas. Debate people. Fight them. That's fine. But don't turn people away. Don't turn their hearts to stone. Instead, be the sun, warm them up, and they will take their jackets off because it's getting too warm, not because they're uncomfortable and it's too cold and they're clinging to it. Think about the last time you were proven wrong. Like you really knew, wow, that was a really dumb idea of mine. That person just destroyed my beliefs. I was wrong. And I'm sure you remember how humiliating and embarrassing and uncomfortable that was, right? Like, I hate being proven wrong. It's so uncomfortable and annoying. So it's one thing for people to be willing to accept that they're wrong when you honestly prove it to them. That's hard enough. Most people, you can't even take that far. But to expect somebody to accept the truth when you prove them wrong and you're being a jerk, you're being mean and humiliating and sarcastic to them, and you're bullying them, you might as well forget it. Like, nobody is going to accept it, except for the most honest of people. The most thoughtful and self-analyzing of people are not going to accept the truth if it's delivered to them sizzling hot, right? And it's really tempting to be sarcastic and mean and just get into this snarky fight. It seems to happen all the time in political debates. And usually the other person will start it. They'll be kind of self-righteous and sarcastic and have this rude tone that you're just an idiot and they're right. But don't fall into that game. Don't fall into that pit. You're just going to get stuck in a debate that goes on for days because neither party wants to look like an idiot who lost because they didn't have the last word, right? That's not what you want. So you will find it incredibly useful and disarming if you turn the other cheek and do not reply with the same venom and hatred and rudeness and sarcasm that the other person throws at you. I know it's really tempting, and I've done it, and it's really hard to resist. And maybe there's a time and place for that, when somebody just needs to be slapped a little bit, put in their place, because they just need to have a wake-up call. But I would say very rarely. Be careful with that. Don't use it in general. In general, again, it's incredibly disarming to just gently correct somebody, take their hatred and anger and turn it around on them and be nice and compassionate. And you'd be amazed how disarming it is. It works on me, I know. When I'm getting all energetic and fierce in a debate and the other person replies with a more calm, reasonable, even if they're wrong, just the fact that they aren't firing up my natural emotional defenses when somebody's being mean, when somebody's being a jerk, everybody is resistant to that. So it would serve you very well to just be more polite during debates. Be nice, be caring, and don't be seen as, don't make it personal. I guess that's how I could sum it up. Don't make it personal.